What's up, everybody? Today is an exciting day because today we install rock sliders on the Ranger. Let's do this. I was so stoked when the sliders finally showed up. It took about 6 weeks for them to arrive from the time that I ordered them. But it was well worth the wait. These things are beefy. These sliders are made from 2-inch square tubing with 1 3/4 round tubing welded to it, and then it has 1/4-inch plate that mounts the slider to the frame. Super heavy duty. I ordered my sliders with the tread plate welded to the top. I thought it looked pretty good, and it really wasn't that much more expensive. And then I also got the textured black powder coat just to save me from having to paint them when they showed up. The rock sliders came with all the hardware needed to install them. I ran into a couple of issues with the hardware that was sent that I'll cover later in the video. Alright, so what we're going to do here is put the slider on these jack stands and try and get it in place to align with the frame, and then get the hardware all bolted in. Once we got started, we immediately ran into the first problem. So we ran into a little problem. We're supposed to reuse the threaded holes for a factory skid plate location, and the bolt that Shrockworks provided is supposed to be an M10, and it's way too big. Just definitely does not fit into that threaded hole. So we're gonna have to run to the store and get a new bolt. All right, got the right bolt now, so let's get it mounted in. We actually rummaged through a box of bolts and found an M10 bolt that we already had, so saved us a trip to the store, and we just used that. So we installed that M10 lower bolt and just snugged it up, and then we went ahead and installed the upper bolt on the front side of the driver slider. Same thing, just snug it up, and then got to work on the back of the slider. The top bolt on the back is just like the top bolt on the front. It feeds through the frame, and you use one of the backing plates on the inside of the frame, and then just snug that one up as well. The lower bolt on the back of the driver slider requires a stick nut, and this is basically a nut that has a flexible piece of metal welded to it, and it allows you to get the nut down into the factory hole inside the frame and then push the bolt up through the bottom and thread it in. I found this easiest to do on the outside of the frame rather than using one of the holes on the inside of the frame. We ran into another problem with the flag nut that Shrockworks sent. So, problem number 2, these stick nuts that Shrockworks provides are great for fishing through the frame, but you can see the weld is on the thread, and so the bolt can't be screwed all the way through. It just stops right there. So I'm gonna have to take a file or a Dremel and grind off that weld to try and get the bolt to be able to come all the way through. Instead of using a Dremel or file, we just threaded the bolt through the weld. I figured the weld was soft enough and the grade 8 bolt would cut through it, which it did. Didn't have any problems with it, and this worked just fine. Once you get the flag nut into position, just insert the bolt, tighten it up, and then you can go back and tighten all 4 of the bolts on the driver's side slider. And that's it for the driver's side. So other than not having the right M10 bolt to thread into the frame and having the welding issue on the flag nut, the driver's side went in pretty easy. It's really straightforward. Once we finished the driver's side, we got started on the passenger side. Pretty much the same routine, except this is the side that you have to drill a hole. But otherwise, the other 3 mounting locations use the factory holes in the frame. And again, once we got started, we ran into another problem. Alright, so we ran into another problem with not having enough hardware. So we have the mounting plate for the front with the bolt and the nuts and washers is good. The bottom on the front is the hole we have to drill, and we have the bolt and the washers and the flag nut for that, which is good. But on the back of the slider, we have enough hardware to mount the rear side bolt, but they didn't include enough lock washers, flat washers, and nuts to mount the bottom. So I'm gonna have to go to the store and buy those. Alright, so we did a quick run to Lowe's, picked up the hardware that we need, extra nut, flat washer, lock washer, and we should be good to go. So let's get started on this passenger side. So the rear top bolt goes in just fine as normal with that backing plate, but that rear bottom bolt is a little tricky. I thought a flag nut really would have helped here, but we figured out a way to get the bolt and the nut to work inside of the frame. So this one has no flag nut, so what I'm going to do is drop this nut in this oval hole, fish it around where I can see it here, put this bolt in, and then tighten it up. So let's do that. The flat side of the nut was close enough to the frame that we didn't need to have a wrench inside the frame to hold the nut while we tighten the bolt. The passenger side front top bolt goes in just like the other top bolts with that backing plate. Feed it through the factory hole in the frame and just snug it up. And that should give you perfect alignment for that bottom hole to drill the hole that you need. Just use a 1/2 inch drill bit and take your time, make sure it's straight. It drills fairly easy. So once the hole is drilled, you use that remaining flag nut to bend the wire to fish the nut into the frame to align with the hole, and then just put the bolt in and tighten it up. And that was pretty much it. Just go back, tighten all 4 bolts, make sure they're all super tight. There are no torque specs in the instructions, so I just got them as tight as I possibly can, and I can check on them later to make sure that they stay tight. Overall, the installation was pretty easy. Outside of the missing M10 bolt, the weld issue on the flag nut, and missing a couple of washers and a nut for one of the bolts, everything went really smooth. Overall, I'm really happy with the sliders. I love the build quality. They're super beefy. It's going to give the Ranger protection that it needs, and they were pretty easy to install. So I'm really happy with them. Looking forward to using them out on the trail. That's it, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.